Hi, welcome to Truth and Reality. I am Ashley, and this podcast is about just that truth and reality, the realities of life, the ups, the downs, the in betweens, and how truth and God and our faith fits into all of that. So, we are here again today talking about forgiveness. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, how are you today?
I'm great. How about you? I have no kids at the moment, so I'm happy to be able to come on here and do this and have no one yelling mom downstairs.
That's lovely. Yeah, I don't have kids either, but as you can see, my dog is really wanting love and attention. So we're just pretending we're like everybody's in my living room and we're just, having coffee with friends. So I figured she can join us today.
I love it. Welcome, River. We're glad you're here.
Yes, my little pup River. So yeah, we're talking about forgiveness again. Last time we talked about what forgiveness is and isn't, and some of the misconceptions or struggles with forgiveness, as we expressed I have and you've
Yeah.
had. And so today I wanted to talk a little bit more about forgiveness, but maybe something you haven't considered, which is one, forgiveness between yourself and God, but also forgiving yourself, because I
Hmm.
think so many times in life and situations, we've had forgiveness with God. We understand God forgives us. He paid Jesus, He gave His Son for us so that we could be made clean and be in right standing with Him. And He paid for our sin. Um, and we walk through that and we know that and we understand that. But sometimes we still hold unforgiveness with ourselves. I think sometimes the hardest person to forgive is ourselves. So I don't know
Yeah.
if you want to talk about that and maybe how you feel or if you've experienced that.
Yeah, I think I have experienced that probably multiple times in my life. And maybe it's a podcast in itself of that journey. But I think specifically what just rings true, just what's most recent in my life is probably just the last 3 years. And so Matt's, diagnosis, in 2010 of him getting, or 20, I'm sorry, 2017, my dates are getting screwed up, just of him getting, diagnosed with cancer and then him passing. I think you saw the journey walking it with me. I really struggled to forgive myself and forgive myself for not being more present in the time, for not being a better caregiver, for failing as a mom. And I think, all of this unforgiveness or feeling all of these things that I wasn't worthy of God's forgiveness because I didn't feel that I held true to the right things with Matt. And there was no reset button. I couldn't go back. None of it could be changed. And so I would say, the last 3 years has been such a process of learning to forgive myself and being okay with the way things were done and the way things ended, or fights that we had had that we shouldn't have had because then cancer came in. And so I think it's such a process to be, like you said, it's hard to forgive yourself. And I'm grateful for therapy. I'm grateful for good friends like you and others that have helped me to be kinder to myself. I feel like sometimes, I don't know, as a society, we're hard on ourselves and being okay and forgiving ourselves for what has done. Because I think it just limits us. And we talked in the last episode about this, just limits us from moving forward and being okay with who we are, and, allows us the ability
Yeah.
to forgive others if we can forgive ourselves. So, yeah, I really struggle with that. I've definitely come to a better place. But that was a really hard journey for me after he died, is going through all of these things I wish I would have done differently.
Yeah. And that's a really hard and vulnerable space to sit in. I guess my question to you would be like, what does that look like if you're willing to share on a
Yeah.
practical level? Like, how do you start to forgive yourself? Like, I agree with you. I hold myself to standards God doesn't even hold me to, right?
Right. Right.
Expecting perfection or judging my former self
Yeah.
with the knowledge I have today or the healing I have today. And
Hmm.
so, where did you start? I guess would be
Yeah.
the question.
Yeah. I think the first thing I really had to do is acknowledge that there was unforgiveness there. And so I could tell my thought pattern and my behavior. I kept going back to these events. And I don't necessarily think those were unhealthy times. We were in the middle of the pandemic. So I would replay over a lot of things that I would do differently. There was a moment where I was seeing a new therapist and she just said, "Can I just kind of help you? Some of this seems like wrong behavior or wrong thought process." And she's like, "I really work on you forgiving yourself for these moments." And so I
Mhm.
began writing and journaling, which is something I wasn't really familiar with up until him passing, of just going through what each thing was and saying, like, I forgive myself, or, even going to God and saying, would you help me forgive those moments where I felt like
Mhm.
I failed him? And that was sometimes just in the quiet of my home in the morning, just going through with God and talking about those moments. And I think journaling helped get a lot of it out of what was in my head, wrong thinking, and
Mhm.
being able to process and then sealing what was done, right? In the sense of like
Oh,
not sealing it that it would ever be changed, right? Because Matt wasn't present to be able to ever say, I forgive you back.
mhm.
But I had to
Yeah.
be okay with that moment, seal it in a way,
Mhm.
and move forward, because I think it can, that unforgiveness can haunt you in a way of feeling like you're not worthy of what's ahead. I didn't feel worthy
Yeah.
of being loved for what was ahead because I felt like I had failed from what was behind me. And so I think it's an action step, some kind of action step I would tell someone to take, is whether it's journaling, talking through with someone as a therapist, and really being able to encapsulate it and say, okay, that part is done and I can't go back and I can move forward. So
Mhm. What did that process do for your mind? Like, you talked about it all in your mind, so you got it out. So once you were able to do that, what kind of healing did you experience after or along the way, maybe even?
I think I really didn't even notice at first that I was having the unforgiveness in myself. I think I was just literally just kind of caught in my thoughts and not thinking they were bad. And it was like
Mhm.
realizing they were spiraling, and it was
Mhm.
causing this negative thoughts of what my life would look like going forward. And again, like I said to you, not feeling worthy of being loved, not feeling worthy of even caring for my kids, because I was holding all
Mhm.
this unforgiveness of all the things I did wrong with the journey with him. And I
Mhm.
think what it became is more freeing. I can see more of a person in my own life right now, seeing myself more lighthearted, more forgiving of others, more showing
Mhm.
others grace, not without boundaries,
Yeah.
more like kids in that moment of realizing I am capable and I am able. I think
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard to see that we hold unforgiveness, right? And I said it once, I think we're hardest on ourselves. And
Mhm.
sometimes it takes an outside person to say, hey, I don't think you're doing this right. And so
Yeah.
I think I see a more lighthearted Melissa, right? Sometimes those thoughts are still there. I grab them more quickly. And,
Mhm.
even sometimes self talk, like I did the best that I could in that situation that I could with Matt.
Yes.
I did the
Yeah.
best that I can, even right now, as a single mom to 4 kids, and I'm doing the best that I can. It's
Yeah.
even, you and I've talked about that. That self talk is a lot of like not believing the lies, you know?
Yeah. It's almost as if like what you're saying too is that as you forgave yourself, you were kind of set free of the thought patterns you didn't even know were toxic or
Yes.
hurtful,
Yep.
right? And it's
Yep.
kind of in that choice, right? So you're saying too, forgiveness as a choice, a
Yep.
one-time thing, recognizing it, being willing to lay it out there. But like when the thoughts pop up or come back or circle around, you get to
Yep.
say, like, what am I going to do with that? And kind of taking your thoughts captive, like it says
Yep.
in the Bible,
Yeah.
in a way of forgiveness, right? Because
Yep.
we also have to take our thoughts captive, um, just with anxiety or fear or stress or, just making sure all
Yep.
those other things. But it's so interesting. I've never thought about taking your thoughts captive in the sense of forgiveness,
Right.
which is true. I mean, you're going to have triggers,
Yep.
you're going to have reminders, you're going to have things pop up. Like the enemy loves to use our past against us,
Yeah.
which is the opposite of God says he forgets it, right? It's
Yep.
erased. And
Yep.
so that's so interesting that there is a process, right?
Right.
Of walking through that. That's
I
beautiful.
would say, I would say, not to interrupt you, if you have the ability, if you're listening to this and you have the ability to go to the person and ask for
Yeah.
forgiveness, not necessarily reconcile, but make it right, I would say
Yeah.
do so. In my situation, because Matt passed, I was not able to go back to that. But if it's
Mhm.
something that you feel strong in your heart, you and I have talked, just where there's maybe just something, a misunderstanding between friendship or a family member. I think if you have the ability, I would say try with healthy boundaries. But in my
Yeah.
case, settle it because he was no longer here. And so I
Yeah.
had to be okay in my heart with the way and the outcome and the way I did things, and be more conscious of who I am going forward, and being showing grace. That's when, as I've really struggled with, is showing grace to myself, and that I don't know why it's so hard. We're hardest on ourselves and I should be kinder,
Mhm.
but I'm getting there.
Well, I love that too. And yeah, like there is something to be said because you didn't have the opportunity to go
Yeah.
back and apologize to Matt. And I'm sure you would have loved that opportunity, right? And
Right.
knowing that when you do have that opportunity, if it's safe, if it's healthy, if you can do that with boundaries and in a good way, how healing that can be for you, for the other person, and just moving forward in that.
Yeah.
is so beautiful. What, and I think too, like, um, valuing what you said, valuing what you've walked through in a sense of it's kind of changed your trajectory of how you do go about now, or how you
Right.
do go about
Yeah.
operating with your family or friends
Yeah.
now. And I've
Yeah.
seen that in you, even in how you say I love you all the time, and we've talked
Yeah.
about that. Now I know that's not forgiveness, but I think that that's come out of this
Yeah.
situation for you, where you're very freely saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, have a great day, to friends, to
Yeah.
family, to people that mean something to you. And for me, remember, like, when you'd say that,
Yeah.
I'd be like, hi, oh, okay, we're at the gym.
Yeah.
I love you too. And that was
Right.
a growth thing, and think something I've learned from you,
Yeah.
because you've said, like, when you don't have the opportunity to go back, like, I want
Right.
people to know how I feel. I want people to
Yeah.
know. And I think
Nope.
that's the same with forgiveness. Like,
Yeah.
if there's opportunity to bridge that, to heal that, to have restoration,
Yep.
even if it doesn't continue a relationship, how important that is. And I see you living that out moving forward in your life and how you operate.
Right. Because I think you're right. Because of the trajectory where my life is and what happened, it helps me live
Mhm.
very consciously going forward, of forgiveness, of letting go of things, of you're right. I say I love you, because I think after you walk through something that's like that, you're so mindful of what it is going forward. And I think
Yeah.
I let things go easier, right? Like things that I would have held grudges, or things that I would have held as disappointment, because you look at how short and how, life is so fragile
Mhm.
in those moments, and relationships. And like you said, I can't go back to that moment. I get emotional, like him
Yeah.
on his
Yeah.
bed and not being able to say like sorry. But I'm grateful for the relationships I have going forward, that I'll be super conscious of making sure that I know that that I love you and I love your kids. And I'm grateful for the people that hold space in your life. Because I think after you go through loss, it makes you
Mhm.
shift and look, through life through a different lens. And there's
Yes.
beauty in that. Painful as it's been, there's beauty in that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing your heart in such a vulnerable space too, that you walked in with, processing your own forgiveness of yourself and the loss of your husband, and that hard situation, because I'm sure there's so many people out there in your situation too, whether it's like a family member or a parent that's no
yeah,
longer here, that they wish they could bridge it back. I think that's just such a vulnerable space that you allowed to have, that where healing can still happen
right.
between you and God, and between you and Matt, and
Yeah,
how God is healing that for you too, that there's still hope even if you can't go back to that person here and now. I
right.
think that's just such a great, like, a beautiful space of, like, pain, sorrow, and forgiveness and joy that can come with both of it. So thanks for sharing that. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
absolutely. Yeah, because I think you and I both have talked. A lot of people have experienced loss, not just me. And mine, I'm coming up on 4 years, and I think you've seen it. You've heard through people through your book. We've all experienced loss, and I think that plays a toll in forgiveness, forgiving ourselves, how it allows us to be going forward. And I think
Mhm.
all of that, it's a work in progress, right? And it's a journey,
Mhm.
that we talk about. And so, I'm grateful for how far I've come, and there's things I'm still learning along the way.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's beautiful. And it'll be interesting to see too, like, how it unfolds as you're living now, and that grace you have for yourself
Yeah,
now, that both of us didn't have when
not
we
at
were
all. Yep.
walking through.
Yeah.
But now that we're living in that space and able to see how freely God forgives, and how he wants us to live in that freedom and not hold it against ourselves, I think
Yep.
that's another layer of freedom that he has for us. It's not saying we're not responsible, right? We're still responsible for our choices and our
Yep.
actions, and what comes out of that, but
Yep.
not continuing to live in that past and put the sin of our past, or our, not even sin, sometimes it's even just our unawareness, or not knowing, right? And our
Yeah,
unhealed position.
yeah, I don't think I was even aware that I was holding on forgiveness in myself. I think the first year was such a deep level of grief and loss. I couldn't
Yeah.
see beyond that. The second year moved into really realizing, like, oh, I have some wrong thinking. Oh, I am really holding myself to a place of not letting go of the woman I was with him. And I think so.
Yeah.
It's like it was a process. It's not something it's so easy to be seen,
No,
you know?
no.
hmm
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah,
think we do things in survival mode, right?
right.
And when you're out of survival mode, you can more clearly see and walk towards healing. And so I think it's important in that space, right? Not to judge our former selves with the knowledge we have today, but to
Yep,
look at our former selves with eyes of compassion, saying, like, oh, I like even saying, oh, I forgive you, or you were doing the best that you could,
yep,
right?
yep,
And seeing
yep,
ourselves that way,
right,
and then walking forward, holding the lessons that we've learned from it, being like you said, how you're going to live differently, how you're
yep,
approaching life a little differently. So
yep. No,
yeah,
100%.
yeah.
Such
Well,
a
thank
process.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
process, life's a process, right?
Yep,
Yes, a journey. So
it is
yeah, so
a
thank you so
beautiful
much.
one. Yes.
It is, with all of the feels in between,
It's
it is
true.
still
It's
beautiful.
true.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing with us. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to talk more about forgiveness moving forward as well. So follow us on Instagram, Facebook at Peace Runs Deep, and check out our website, peacerunsdeep.com. We're so glad that you're here. Thanks so much for joining us.